What's up guys, welcome back to another video. I'm your host, Typical Pirate, and I have a pretty cool video for you. Today, I'm going to go over 40 helpful tips for beating the legendary difficulty in Skyrim. This video is aimed for people who have not yet made a legendary run, or have tried to and struggled. All the tips in this video have been made from my personal experiences for my own legendary runs. If you have any good pieces of advice from your runs, feel free to drop them in the comments section below. I'll pin the comment that I find most insightful. Before we begin, I want to point out that I made a previous video where I explained Skyrim legendary difficulty in full and provided advice for how to make a viable build and other basics like that. If you haven't seen it and you are new to legendary, I'd recommend that you go and watch that video first for context and then come back and watch this one. Without further ado, let's get right into the video. So we'll start this video off with some more general tips that are good for pretty much every playthrough, and then we'll get into specifics later on in the video. So tip number 1, use conjuration spells. If you are struggling against enemy ambushes and attacks from enemies in the early game, a great way to deal with them is by using conjuration spells to summon quick distractions or raise the dead. It's one of the easiest ways to get enemies off your back, and it's one of the strongest tools in legendary difficulty. Tip number 2, be careful with your perk points. Make sure to spend your perk points wisely. You only get so many of them, and any wasted perk will give you a disadvantage because of how enemies level with you. Make sure to pick perks that focus on damage output and resilience. You should avoid perks that are niche, unhelpful, or perks that are not versatile for a lot of situations. You should also make sure to target perks that will help you branch off to more powerful perks later down a skill tree. For tip number 3, this is just a reminder to save often. You will die a lot in legendary difficulty, so it's a good idea to make sure you're saving after every big encounter. You shouldn't have to spam the quick save button, but you should be aware that you could literally perish at any given time on this difficulty. For tip number 4, your first major roadblock in legendary will be that giant frostbite spider in Bleak Falls Barrow. You need to take this fight super slowly because he can one-shot you with a poison range attack at any given moment. Use a bow to deal chip damage to the spider and then hide behind cover whenever he retreats. You can also use your flame spell too. It actually does a surprisingly good amount of damage even if you aren't doing a mage build. His melee attack is not too strong, so you can always go in with a sword whenever he's at lower health, but that poison attack will be a problem if it hits you. This poison damage can be mitigated if you are a Redguard or if you have some enchantments or potions that help deal with poison. Tip number 5, use the environment to your advantage. A good combat tip for legendary is to use the environment around you to help you out in your fights. Most traps in the game are going to do a lot of damage to enemies, so it's a good idea to try to kite them into triggering those traps. You can also use ledges, barriers, and stairs to buy time to regenerate health and magicka. And it's a good idea to look for height advantages if your build has a ranged attack. Many dungeons will also have oil on the ground to ignite when enemies get nearby, and most dungeons in the game will have a spring door trap or something like that where you can lure enemies to deal a lot of damage. Tip number 6, make sure to always carry enough soul gems. I highly recommend making sure to pack a ton of filled soul gems with you everywhere you go. All of your weapons should be enchanted, and the high health pool of the enemies means that you may need to use more than one enchantment charge for harder fights. Not to mention, staffs, which could be really important for a legendary run, eat up soul gems like crazy, and so for this reason I always recommend carrying a weapon with Soul Trap. You can use this weapon on weaker enemies so that your stronger weapons with the actual better enchantments will be ready for when you fight bosses and stronger enemies. Tip number 7, cook your food. If you are tight on cash in the early game and you need more health potions, which you will in Legendary, a good idea is to stock up on cooked food. It's so easy to buy, hunt, or steal raw meat in this game, which then you can cook up in any cooking pot. It's a great way to carry around extra health with you, which could save you in a lot of fights. Many cooked items will provide a lot of other benefits, and some of them we'll even talk about later in this video. Tip number 8, save your level ups. Now, most players in the game already know about this, but make sure to save your level ups for when you need help in combat. Whenever you select that base stat to increase on the level up screen, you will fully restore all of your stamina, health, and magicka at an instant. This can be super helpful in those tough boss fights, but you need an extra boost to win the fight. Tip number 9, prepare for poison damage. Poison is going to be a very big threat to you because the damage isn't prevented by your armor. Frostbite spiders, Chloris, and Falmer can end you in 1 or 2 poisoned attacks if you aren't careful. Make sure to pack a ring or amulet with some poison resistance on it, or carry around a few poison resistance or cure poison potions. It will save you so much health and time and stress if you prepare properly. Like I mentioned before, if you selected the Red Guard race for your character, you will already have a 50% poison resistance, so that's helpful. Now, for tip number 10, it's piggybacking off of tip number 9. This is how you make poison resist potions. Here is a list of the ingredients for the recipe: beehive husk, charred skeever tail, Falmer ear, garlic, grass pod, mud crab chitin, slaughterfish egg, troll fat, and yellow mountain flowers. Combine 2 or 3 of these ingredients to get a potion with a resist poison effect. The strength of this resist poison effect will be determined on your alchemy skill and other perks that will affect stuff like this. Tip number 11, use the 1 second paralyze trick. A good strategy is to enchant your weapon with a paralyze effect for only 1 second. Enemies will still have to go through the entire animation of falling down and getting back up again, and you'll be able to do a lot of damage while they are stuck in this animation. You also get the benefit of having the max amount of charges on your weapon because the enchantment is weak, comparatively to a 5-second enchantment. This trick lets you get so much damage on enemies that don't resist paralyze, and it also lets you buy time in group fights by temporarily disabling 1 or more enemies. Tip number 12. Use Become Ethereal to avoid traps. Most traps in the dungeons of Skyrim will kill you in 1 hit on Legendary. It's super important to be aware of these traps, or else it could lead to some frustrating deaths. If you have trouble finding your way around them, you can use the Become Ethereal shout to trigger most traps without taking any damage. You can also get the Silent Step perk in the sneak tree if you're running a sneak build. This will definitely help you avoid those frustrating deaths that seemingly come out of nowhere. Tip number 12, avoid Falmer. Yeah, this one's kind of weird, but the Falmer are definitely going to give you some trouble in Legendary. They have high health pools, deal a lot of damage, use poisons and staffs, and so the best way to deal with them is honestly to sneak right past them. Most of the loot that Falmer typically drop is not very good, so it's not worth using your precious health potions and other resources to deal with them. This is one of the few cases in the game where I feel like Muffle is a better spell than Invisibility. This is because Falmer can only detect you by hearing you. Throw Voice is also a really good shout to use to distract Falmer enemies too, and it's a great tool for sneak builds. Tip number 14, be creative when dealing with Dwemer Spheres. Dwemer Spheres are super tough enemies to beat. They are completely immune to frost and poison, and they have a 25% resistance to magic damage. Combine this with their high damage melee attack and their strong crossbow attack, and you can be completely overwhelmed by just 2 or 3 of them. My best advice is to either abuse Conjuration or try to lure these spheres into the many traps that Dwarven ruins tend to have. In particular, those giant metal blades on the staircases are super helpful for defeating any Dwarven machines and other threats. I'll try to find a picture of them to put them up on the screen right now, but I'm sure most of you guys already know what they look like anyways. Tip number 15, use Elemental Fury against Dwarven machines. Piggybacking off of number 14 a little bit, Dwarven machines are of course resistant to magic but not physical damage. So using an unenchanted weapon with the Elemental Fury shout is super effective. If you didn't know, Elemental Fury only works with unenchanted weapons, and so using a magical weapon against a magic resistant enemy is, well, less than optimal. So using an unenchanted weapon with Elemental Fury is going to be super good. Just know that most Dwarven machines do have a lot of armor, but it's the best you can do in a bad situation. Tip number 16, be careful when you fight Dwarven spiders. While most Dwarven spiders are relatively weak, they do have a trick up their sleeves. Most varieties of Dwarven spiders will explode on death with a shock blast. On Legendary, it can hurt really bad. If you do have to get close to them to beat them, bring some shock resistance to mitigate the damage done. Tip number 17, dealing with the Frost Troll. If you're having trouble with that one Frost Troll on the way to High Hrothgar, or any other Frost Troll in particular, use this trick. If you find that he's regenerating health too quickly, use Fire Damage enchants or a lingering health poison to severely slow his health regen. The troll will still be a worthy adversary because of its health pool and its damage, but if you use Conjuration as well as a few other tricks, you should be okay for most trolls. Tip number 18, bring some help to deal with dragons. In this area of the game, there's not a whole lot I can help out when talking about dragons. They are, of course, one of the toughest challenges in this game. If you get jumped by a dragon, there's simply not a whole lot you can do about it, unless you get lucky or prepare properly. On the lucky side of things, if you're near a town, a dungeon, a giant camp, or anything like that, it's a good idea to try to lure the dragon to those areas. Pretty much every NPC in the game will be hostile to dragons, so use that to your advantage. Tip number 19, use consumables to help your odds against dragons. If you do happen to be unlucky and you're in a field in the middle of nowhere, here's a tip that could help your odds of survival. Dragon Fire and Frost Breath attacks basically act as regular magic attacks. You can use magic resistance potions and enchantments to help keep you alive longer in these fights. I would recommend always carrying a few fire resistance potions and frost resistance potions just on the occasion that a dragon would jump you at the worst possible time. Tip number 20, be careful if you attack dragons with a melee weapon once they land. Dragons can attack you from all directions once they land. They can hit you with their wings on the side, bite you if you attack them head on, and tail whip you if you are behind them. These attacks are devastating, just 2 or 3 of them can put you 6 feet under. The best way to avoid this damage is, well, to distract the dragon as much as you can. Sometimes there's just not a whole lot you can do. Tip number 21, clear skies is not useless. While we're on the topic of dragons, you can use the clear skies shout to counter Alduin's meteor storm attack during his boss fights. This will save you so many frustrating deaths, as these meteor strikes are devastating on legendary difficulty. Alduin's meteor storm attack is super unpredictable and it will hit you hard at random points. Finally, there's a reason to use clear skies in Skyrim. Tip number 22. Use Dragon's Bane. The best weapon in the game to deal with dragons is Dragon's Bane. You can find it in Skyhaven Temple once you reach a certain part in the main quest. This weapon will deal up to 40 extra points of damage to dragons depending on your level. It's a super important pickup for any player looking to beat the game. It's also one of the only effective tools the Dragonborn will have during any other dragon attack as well. It's a very helpful pickup for any players even if you aren't using a one-handed build. Tip 23, use vegetable soup. One of the best and cheapest food items to cook for in Legendary is vegetable soup. Vegetable soup, which requires a leek, potato, tomato, and a cabbage, will restore 1 health and stamina per second for 12 minutes. This might not sound like a good buff at first, but it lets you do something pretty cool. Since power attacks only require 1 stamina to initiate, and this item lets you constantly regenerate 1 stamina, this item will let you infinitely power attack as much as you would like, and it will let you constantly stagger enemies. It's super amazing for pretty much any non-mage build. Tip number 24, use Maroon's Razor. One of the best weapons for this difficulty is Maroon's Razor. This item will give you a 2% chance to instantly defeat any enemies, excluding most major bosses. While in lower difficulties, the effect on this item barely helps in most fights since enemies have lower health pools. However, it's super helpful in Legendary. Since health pools are incredibly high in this difficulty, having any chance to instantly destroy the enemy will save you a lot of time, energy, and frustration. I don't really recommend it against the more common enemies since other weapons will be faster in most circumstances, but this weapon is great for dragons, dragon priests, Draugr death overlords, and other mini-boss fights. I will say using Maroon's Razor is cheap and it kind of feels like cheating, so if you're playing Legendary for the full experience, I wouldn't recommend picking up this weapon. But if you're just playing Legendary for bragging rights or something like that, then by all means, go ahead and pick up this weapon. But I wouldn't recommend it for players who are playing the difficulty for the challenge. Tip number 25, acquire the Wabbajack. Another very strong weapon for Legendary is the Wabbajack. The Wabbajack is a staff that will apply a random effect, good or bad, to the enemy. While this weapon can help your enemies by healing them or turning them into a Daedra, the majority of these effects on this weapon will hurt them. Many of these effects will be a harmful spell, and some of them can even instantly defeat the enemy. It won't work against larger targets like dragons and giants, but the Wabbajack is a great weapon to have in your back pocket. Also, just like with Maroon's Razor in tip number 24, I wouldn't recommend using the Wabbajack if you're trying to beat the game without cheesing many of the harder fights in this game. It's still a great weapon though for players that don't really care about that. Tip number 26, prepare for brawls. Surprisingly, one of the toughest parts of Legendary difficulty is going to be dealing with brawls. If you find yourself needing to win a fist fight in Legendary, make sure to find and wear the Gloves of the Pugilist. These are worn by John the Fist in the Ratway, who is hostile. This is the only way to find and learn this enchant without the Creation Club or Anniversary Edition add-ons. If you do have those add-ons, any of the Brawler's gloves will work just fine for fist fights. These fights are so tough even with a lot of armor because enemies now actually do damage when they punch you, and you don't do anything back. Alternatively, if you are a Khajiit or an Argonian, you will already be doing extra damage with your fists anyways, so it's not a big of a deal if you picked those races. Tip number 27, dodge and roll. Against enemies with two-handed weapons, it's possible to strike the enemy in between their swings. The slow swing speed gives you a window of opportunity to dodge a swing and then follow up with a counterattack. Just be careful when you try this tactic though, because one or two mistakes can put you 6 feet under. Those attacks are devastating. Tip 28, avoid Sabercats like the plague. Sabercats are already tough enemies in the early game on Adept, but on Legendary they are basically Dark Souls bosses. They often reside away from pathways and structures, so make sure to stick to the path when traveling throughout Skyrim. If you do get jumped by a Sabercat, really your only option is to use Kind's Peace or Animal Allegiance to deal with the threat. Alternatively, if you picked Wood Elf as your race, you will have the Command Animal ability, which is helpful for this situation. Just know it can only save you from Sabercats once a day. Tip number 29, avoid the lockpicking and pickpocket skill tree. For the love of the Nine Divines, do not invest any skill points or training gold into the pickpocket or lockpicking tree. These skills and perks in these trees do not help with the challenges a Legendary provides. You are much better off putting your points into combat or crafting trees. This is incredibly important because enemies will scale level with you, so if you don't invest into your combat ability, enemies will get stronger while you stay the same. Tip number 30, invest your dragon souls wisely. Be very selective of what shout you invest your dragon souls into. Dragon souls can be very difficult to acquire, especially in Legendary, and there are many shouts that can make your life so much easier. For example, don't put any dragon souls into Aura Whisper. Doing stuff like that will set you behind so far. Tip number 31, use Animal Allegiance against mammoths. Want to loot and explore giant camps, but you're too afraid of the giants who will send you to the moon with one swing of their weapon? Try the Animal Allegiance shout. Since mammoths typically travel with giants, you can force them to attack their masters with Animal Allegiance while you loot the camps. It's the perfect diversion. Tip number 32, deal with fall damage. Fall damage is a surprisingly important hazard to watch out for. Since fall damage is also drastically increased by the Legendary difficulty modifier, it's something you're going to have to watch out for in your playthrough. A good way to completely stop fall damage is to use the Become Ethereal shout to drop from cliffs and ledges completely unharmed. Just make sure you use it before you leap instead of during the fall. Tip number 33, bring a shield to a bow fight. Archers are going to be some of the most frustrating enemies to deal with in this mode. The best advice I can give to you to deal with archers is to carry a shield and get the Deflect Arrows perk in the block skill tree. You should also get the Block Runner perk to help close the distance against archers much quicker. This will force them to take out their secondary weapon, which will usually be a weak dagger of some sort, which will drastically reduce their effectiveness. If you don't have a shield with your build, the best advice I can give is to use Conjuration or some other distraction and then close the distance that way. Tip number 34, disarm can counter archers. Another way that you can deal with archers is to use the disarm shout. Like I said before, most archers in Skyrim will only carry a weak backup weapon like a steel or iron dagger, making them vulnerable if you can manage to knock their bow out of their hand. They might try to pick their weapons back up from the ground, but at the very least, disarm will buy you so much time in fights against archers. Tip number 35, use Ice Form on ranged enemies. If you need to fight a mix of both melee and ranged enemies, use a shout like Ice Form on the ranged enemies to stop them from attacking or moving, while you focus on beating up the melee enemies. This way, the ranged enemies will be left more vulnerable without any support. Ice Form will also allow you to close the distance against archers, which will again make them switch to their secondary weapon. Tip number 36, use Whirlwind Cloak. Whirlwind Cloak is a great spell for most playstyles. When used, it generates an aura around you that will have a chance to knock down nearby enemies on the ground. The effect it gives can fully stop most melee enemies from attacking or blocking, which can allow you to deal some great damage. Tip number 37, be careful when you're using invisibility. If you decide to rely on invisibility for stealth, be careful because any action you take will result in the effect wearing off. For example, opening a door, attacking, taking an item, any of that and the effect is gone. In this difficulty, it could mean life or death if you get caught in the wrong moment. Tip number 38, prepare to fight mages. Mages are always going to give you a tough time in Legendary. Make sure to carry jewelry with magic resistance enchantments to help level the playing field. Make sure to pack enough resistance for all types of magic so that you can be prepared for whatever kind of mage you fight. Tip number 39, boots and shields are great for magic resistance. You can enchant both boots and shields with heavy magic resistance for any particular magic type. So, with that being said, it's a good idea to bring extra sets of boots and shields with different magic resistances for when you fight mages. This way you can swap out any resistance type to best fit what type of mage, magic enemy, or dragon you're fighting against. Tip number 40, grab the Elemental Protection perk. If you plan to use a shield in Legendary, grab the Elemental Protection perk. This will reduce the incoming magic damage when you block. Combine this with all 3 levels of the magic resistance perk and the effects of enchantments and other effects. It's possible to gain 100% magic resistance when you block. This is super helpful for those crazy boss level mages or vampires. I can't reiterate enough, if you don't prepare to fight against magic enemies, you're going to have a rough time in Legendary difficulty. And for my last piece of advice to you, experiment. Think outside of the box. Skyrim on Legendary is super tough, but it's not impossible if you play your cards right. Try experimenting with different poison and enchantment combos, or working with spells you've never really tried. Trying out different tactics and seeing what works for you is the key to beating this difficulty. Well, that's a wrap. That is 40 helpful tips for the Legendary difficulty in Skyrim. If you've made it this far into the video, thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed this content or found it helpful, feel free to like or subscribe. Your support is greatly appreciated. That's all from me. Thanks for watching and have a great rest of your day.